Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel is Discerning What is True. Today is the 12th day of March, that is 2023. I am going to continue what I just did a few minutes ago, reading a book called Adam Weishaupt, A Human Devil. This will be part two of the program today. Hope all is doing well. So we're going to go into the reading of this particular book. And it's a section starting with what we call the Jesuits. Weishaupt was trained as a Jesuit. He later renounced the organization, you see. He may or may not have been sincere in his change of attitudes, but the fact remains that the fierceness of this Roman Catholic militarist order fashioned its influence upon him. It left an impression that it contributed to all of his future inventions and decisions. A short detour into the nature and purpose of this organization will give an insight into the forces which helped to mold the character of this man. The story of the Society of Jesus, that is, Jesuits, is interesting but far from inspiring. It is the army of the Roman Catholic Church and has behind it a trail of Protestant blood which will never be able to wash away. It is a vast, powerful, worldwide machine with reputation for moving swift and terribly. A modern writer calls them the Black International. Credit is given for the founding of the order to Ignatius Loyola on April 5, 1541. It will be recalled that Loyola was previously arrested by the Spanish government for subversive activities as a Gnostic. He was not convicted, though. Disraeli, the Jewish premier of England, said in his book Connoisseur, "You never observed a great intellectual movement in Europe in which the Jews do not greatly participate. The first Jesuits were Jews." I'll add something else to that. All three major religions that are in the West, and including the Middle East, are all Jewish inspired. That is the Christianity, that is their own religion, the Judaism, and also the Islamic faith. All show a male character as being God, one God that is, unlike the pagans, and not only that, it's a male God, which is interesting also. But anyway, let's get back to what he was saying here. The Jesuits made their headquarters in the Vatican at Rome. The head of the order is known as the general. His position is that of commander-in-chief, and he wields absolute power over the members who are pledged to blind obedience. The general claims his authority from the Pope. Each member makes a series of vows and takes certain secret oaths. The fourth vow is known to be one of the special allegiance to the Pope, promising to go into obedience to him whensoever, and whithersoever he may demand. Jesuits have been dubbed the secret service men of the Vatican. Because the general of the Jesuits always wears a black garb, he's familiarly known as the Black Pope. There have been times when popes have refused to counter Jesuitical crimes and had curtailed or disbanded the order. An instance of this kind occurred on July 21st, 1773, when the Pope abolished him at the demand of the governments of France, Spain, Portugal, Naples, and Austria. But they were soon back in the fold, stronger than ever. They are reported to be active in all parts of the world. In her treatise, Occult Theocracy, Lady Queensborough takes the following quotation from a manuscript entitled Historia des Congregationes as Solites Jesuit Despediu, 1563, Justical and Temps present, which she found in Rule, R-U-E, Richet, R-C-H-E-L-I-U, Library at Paris. Initiation. From this, as well as other works, we gather some of the ceremonies which aspirants were initiated into the order. This is talking about the Jesuits. She found the particular book that actually deals with this. Having a nearly all Roman Catholic country seceding and becoming the educators of the youth, they were able to mold the youthful mind according to their secret aims. If then, after a number of years, they detected in the pupil a blind and fanatic faith conjoined with exalted pietism and indomitable courage, they proceeded to initiate him. In a opposite case, that they excluded him. The proofs lasted 24 hours, for which the candidate was prepared by long and severe fasting, which by prostrating his bodily strength inflamed his fantasy, and just before the trial, a powerful drink was administered to him. Then the mystic scene begun. Diabolically apparitions, evocation of the dead, representations of the flames of hell, skeletons, moving skulls, artificial thunder and lightning. In fact, the whole paraphemal and apparatus of the ancient mysteries, you see. It is, if the neophyte who was closely watched showed fear or terror, he remained forever in the inferior degree. But if he bore the proof well, he was advanced to a higher grade. And the initiation in the second degree was scholasticism. The same proof, but on a grander scale, had to be undergone. The candidate, again prepared for them by long fasting, was led with his eyes bandaged into a large cabin, resounding with wild howlings and roaring which he had to traverse, reciting at the same time prayers specifically appointed for that occasion. At the end of the cave, he had to crawl through a narrow opening, and while doing this, the bandage was taken from his eye by an unseen hand, and he found himself in a square dungeon, whose floor was covered with mortuary cloth, on which stood 3 lamps, shedding a feeble light on the skulls and skeletons ranged about. This was a cave of evocation, and called the Black Chamber, so famous in the annals of the fathers. Here, giving himself up to prayer, neophyte passed some time, during which the priestess could, without his being aware of it, watch his every movement and gestures. If his behavior was satisfactory, all at once 2 brethren representing archangels representing themselves before him, without his being able to tell whence they had so suddenly startled up. A good deal can be done with properly fitted and oiled trapdoors, and observing perfect silence, bound his forehead with a white band soaked with blood and covered with a Hippocrates. They then hung a small crucifix around his neck and a small satchel containing relics of what did duty for them. Finally, they took off all his clothing, which they cast on a pie in a corner of the cave, and marked his blood with numerous crosses drawn with blood. At this point, the hierophant, with his assistants, entered, and having bound a red cloth round the middle of the candidate's body, the brethren, clothed in blood-stained garments, placed themselves beside him, and drawing their daggers, formed a steel arch over his head. A carpet being then spread on the floor, all knelt down and prayed for about an hour, after which the pie was secretly set on fire. The further wall of the cave opened, and air resounded with strains, now gay, now lugubrious. And a long procession of spectacles, phantoms, angels, and demons filed past the neophyte like the supers in a pantomime. While this farce was going on, the candidate took the following oath: in the name of the Christ crucified, I swear to burst the bonds that you unite me to father, mother, brothers, sisters, relations, with friends, to the king, masters, and any other authority to which I may ever have sworn fealty, obedience, gratitude, or service. I renounce the place of my birth, henceforth to exist in another sphere. I swear to reveal to my new superior, whom I desire to know, what I have done, thought, read, learned, or discovered, and to observe and watch all that comes under my notice. I swear to yield myself up to my superior as if I were a corpse, deprived of life and will. I finally swear to flee temptation and to reveal all I succeed in discovering, well aware that lightning is not more rapid and ready than the dagger to reach me wherever I may be. The new member, having taken this oath, was then introduced into a neighboring cell, where he took a bath and was clothed in garments of new and white linen. He finally repaired with the other brethren to a banquet, where he could, with choice food and wine, compensate himself for his long absences and the horrors and fatigues he had passed through. Events in the history of the Jesuits seem to bear out the supposition that both Jews and Catholics had at times united their efforts in his ranks to bring about a destruction of Protestantism. To illustrate, during the years 1573 to 1580, the international general was a Belgian Jew by the name of Eberhard Mercurian. I'll spell it for you, MER-CURIAN, Curian. Thus, we see a Jew Jesuit and a Gentile Pope working together, a mutual adulteration society in a frantic effort to put Protestantism on the gallows. The present general is a Pole by nationality, his name being Vladimir Lodowski, spelled Ledochowski. The real reason for establishing the Society of Jesus was to check the progress of the Reformation, which broke upon the world in a little town called Wittenberg, Germany, October 31st, 1517. While the Jesuits failed in their attempt to blot out Protestantism out of existence, yet they did succeed in stopping the growth of the movement in southern Germany and other countries of Europe. No one has taken the trouble to deny that the order exists down to the present time for the same purpose, namely a flank attack upon Protestants and their faith. The leading principles of the Jesuits sounds good enough, love of God and of their fellow man, but also in the constitutions there was written another principle, end justifies the means. In other words, when occasion demands it, any moral law may be transgressed to promote the interests of the church. Someone has called this arrangement holy hellishness. Many vicious crimes have been laid at the door of the Jesuits in the past, notably the gunpowder plot in England and the killing of the Huguenots in France. The Huguenots were John Calvinist followers. And we can talk about that in the future. I don't believe that the Protestants themselves are also of good rapport. I believe they're another control group. But they had to make this look real, you see. But you've got to look at what happened to the Anabaptists. If you study that, you can really begin to figure out that in some ways too. Anyway, I recall while being shown through the Parliament buildings in London, we paused at a certain place and was told that if the gunpowder plot had been carried out in 1605, as planned by the Jesuits, the king and members of the Parliament would have been destroyed. 36 barrels of gunpowder, more than a ton, had been stored in the basement ready to be exploded when the sessions of the government convened. The plot was not discovered until 2 days before the Parliament met. The scheme was traced to the Jesuits, and some of their leaders in England were put to death as a result. But the most heinous crime of which the Jesuits have ever been guilty of was the slaughter of unsuspecting Huguenots on Sunday, August 24, 1572. It was on this day of St. Bartholomew, a quiet Sunday in Paris, suddenly the bells of the Saint Germain began to ring. I shall never forget the chill that came over me, as I walked through the doors of this building for the first time, realizing that this was the place where the signal was given to massacre of the Protestants. Like a cat spring upon an unsuspecting bird, so the Jesuits sprang upon the defenseless Protestants. Colignan, the leader of the Huguenots, was among those put to death in this awful orgy of blood. From Paris, the massacre soon spread to other cities, and it had been estimated that no less than 100,000 Protestants were wiped out. Weishaupt may have tried consciously to separate himself from the Jesuits, but the early influences of the order lingered with him throughout his life, even if he did divorce himself from the visible organization. He had already assimilated his intangible principles. That he drew upon the Jesuits for methods and nomenclature is readily admitted by careful students of the man and his work. Gould, in his History of Freemasonry, remarks, Weishaupt, had unconsciously imbibed that most pernicious doctrine that the end justifies the mean. The next section is called the French Revolution. After spending years in investigating the Illuminati and its ramification, let me just show you something here. This is a particular book that's written by this, it's already said this particular guy's name, Professor Roberson, and this is called Proofs of Conspiracy by John Roberson. And I plan to read this book too in the future. I got plenty of books to read, to be honest with you. But Professor Roberson felt prolonged to write. We assert with confidence that the Mason lodges in France were hotbeds where the seeds were sown and tenderly reared of all the pernicious doctrines which soon after choked every moral religious cultivation and have made the society worse than a waste and made it a noisome marsh of human corruption, filled with every rank and poisonous weed. It was in that respect that the most Masons' lodges contribute to the dissemination of dangerous opinions, and they were employed for the purpose of all over the kingdom. And thus it appears that Germany had experienced the same gradual progress from religion to atheism, from decency to dissolutionism, and from loyalty to rebellion, which has had its course in France. Freemasonry is innocent of all these things, but Freemasonry has been abused, at last totally perverted, and so will and must any such secret organization, as long as men are licentious in their opinions or wicked in their dispositions. Weishaupt trickery in directing things from behind the scenes and disclosed in the following letter written by him to a fellow alumnus. We must consider how we can begin to work under another form. If only the aim is achieved, it does not matter under what cover it takes place, and a cover is always necessary, for in concealment lies a great part of our strength. For this reason, we must cover ourselves with the name of another society. The lodges that are under Freemasonry are in the meantime the most suitable cloak for our high purposes, because the world is already accustomed to expect nothing great from them which merit attention. As in the spiritual orders of the Roman Church, religion was at last only a pretense, so much our order also in a nobler way tried to conceal itself behind a learned society or something of the kind. A society concealed in this matter cannot be worked against. We shall be shrouded in impenetrable darkness from spies and emissaries of other societies. The manner in which Masons were frequently misled is illustrated by a letter from a leader by the name of Cato, C-A-T-O, to Weishaupt. Now that he, that is a new prospect, is a Mason, I have put all about this Illuminati before him, shown him what is unimportant, and at this opportunity taken up the general plan about Illuminati. And as this pleased him, I said that such a thing really existed, whereat he gave me his word that he would enter in. Showing how they sought by capture whole lodges, the following letter was sent by a member named Theo to Weishaupt. I have now found in Cassel, the best man on whom I cannot congratulate ourselves enough. He is Mauvillon, Mauvillon, Grand Master of one of the Royal York Lodges. So with him we have the whole lodge in our hands. He has also got from them all their miserable degrees. Molière, a French writer, left this record in one of his reports. Weishaupt makes the acquaintance of a Hanoverian, the Baron von Knigge, Knigge, a famous intriguer, long practiced in the charlatanism of lodges of Freemasons. On his advice, new degrees were added to the old ones, and it was resolved to profit by Freemasonry while profiting despise it. They decided that degrees of apprentices, fellow craft, master mason, and Scottish knight would be added to these of the Illuminati, and that they would boast of possessing exclusiveness the real secrets of the Freemasons, and affirm that Illuminism was the real primitive Freemasonry. So what they're doing, they're going to try to take it over, which they're doing it, but also bringing their principles in and saying they're better or worse. Not until the government confiscated the property of the Illuminati was it possible to penetrate its secrets and really get at the man behind the system. On one occasion, Weishaupt wrote to an intimate friend, "My circumstances necessitate that I should remain hidden from most of the members as long as I like, or as long as I live. I am obliged to do everything through 5 or 6 persons." On another occasion, he said, "One must show how easy it would be for one clever head to direct hundreds of thousands of men." So he's boasting. Again, he wrote, "I have 2 immediately below me into whom I breathe my whole spirit, and each of these 2 has again 2 others, and so on. In this way, I can set 1,000 men in motion and on fire in the simplest manner, and in this way, one must impart orders and operate on politics." Shortly before the French Revolution in the latter part of the 18th century, we find the Marquis de Lachey saying, "This society aims at governing the world. Its object is universal domination." He called it the Illuminati, subterraneans fire smothering eternally and breaking forth periodically in violence and devastating explosions. He pleaded with the Masons as a whole to get their eyes open and save their order from these corrupting influences. Would it not be possible to direct the Freemasons themselves against the Illuminists by showing them that while they are working to maintain harmony in society, these others everywhere are sowing seeds of discord? In plain language, the program of Illuminized Freemasonry was simply a plan for upsetting the whole world by revolutions. When it captured the lodge rooms of Europe, the plain truth became a subterranean fire. The first great explosion took place in what we know in history of the French Revolution. Imagine thousands of lodges rooms converted into nests of human vipers, men possessing warped intellects with one uncontrollable impulse surging through their arteries called destruction, 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 and you will be getting down to the true cause of the Holocaust, which drenched the French nation in human blood. What was the aim of the occult power? That is, this occult power, asked Mrs. Webster. Was it merely a plan of destruction through the centuries that Weishaupt and his allies had not created, but only loosened upon the world? That is, the reign of terror, like the outbreak of Satanism in the Middle Ages, can be explained by no material causes. The orgy of hatred, lust, and cruelty directed not only against the rich, but still more against the poor and the defenseless. The destruction of science, art, and beauty, the desecration of the churches, the organized campaign against all that was noble, all that was sacred, all that is humanity holds dear. What was this but Satanism? To those who lived through it, it seemed that France laid under the sway of the power of darkness. So in the great shipwreck of civilization, as a contemporary has described it, the projects of the Kabbalists, the Gnostics, and the secret society, which for nearly 18 centuries has sapped the foundation of Christianity, found their fulfillment. It is a fact that the powers of the devil causes such outbursts in the French Revolution, but it's also true that these powers manifest themselves through human beings. There's no difficulty in discovering who were the obsessed personalities that permitted themselves to become the instruments of Satan and bringing this great sorrow upon the French people. We will have no God, no master, shouted the mobs, not knowing that they were merely croaking like frogs, repeating the ideas inculcated by Weishaupt and his followers. Then they picked up a woman from the streets of Paris, dressed her in a costly robes, and profaned the Cathedral of Notre Dame by worshiping her as the goddess of reason. In prostrating themselves before this new god, the jeering crowds little knew that they were surrendering to their philosophy of the ancient Gnostics, who boasted that reason was superior to faith. Weishaupt was hidden so deep in the shadows that no one suspected his connection with the goddess in Notre Dame. But long before her appearance, he had introduced the secret poison which was then becoming manifest. He utilized reason as the supreme factor in religion. Here were his words: when at last reason becomes the religion man, so will the problem be solved. And another time he wrote, Freemasonry is hidden Christianity. At least my explanation, the hieroglyphics fit this perfectly. And in the way in which I explain Christianity, no one needs to be ashamed to be a Christian, for I leave the name and substitute for it reason. By the method of deduction used above of identifying reason as an integral part of Weishaupt's code, it's possible to trace every phase of the French Revolution to some parts of the Illuminati program behind the scenes. In other words, when lightning struck on the surface of France, it was merely the visible effects of hidden causes which had been carefully planned and timed by the conspirators. The events starting in 1789 were only Illuminists in action, and no informed person will say that the planning had ceased. The same plot is being carried out today through secret and subterranean channels. So it continues, folks. It has not been stopped. There's abundance of proof that such leaders of the revolution as Lafayette, Mirabeau, Marat, M-A-R-A-T, Robespierre, Danton, Desmosius, and many others were active members of the Illuminized Masonic lodges. From these sources, they got their ideas, acquired their fierceness, and worked out their plots. Every student of history will recall that the political clubs known as the Jacobins, Jacobins, held the balance of power throughout the French Revolution. Among the early members of this mysterious organization were Mirabeau and Robespierre. The Encyclopedia Breton Britannicus says by August 10, 1790, there were already 152 affiliated clubs. At the close of 1791, Jacobins had a network of branches all over France. It was this widespread yet highly centralized organization that gave to the Jacobin Club its formal power. The secret of that strength was this: in the midst of general disorganization, they alone were organized. Okay, so you have to order from chaos. Order in chaos. From the time the first Jacobin Club was organized, these centers were duly illuminated by WEISHAUPT principal helpers, including Bode, B-O-D-E, and Baron de Buch. The basic purpose of the Jacobins was to further the triumph of dogmatic atheism and create a great social upheaval. The French writer La Forestière explains, the members charged with spreading the propaganda of the subversion principles of the club numbered 50,000. In 1790, it had 20,000 liris at its disposal, but at the end of 1791, this had increased to 30 millions. The history of the unspeakable terror of the French Revolution is the history of the Jacobins, and the history of the Jacobins is the history of the Illuminati. Let it be remembered that one of Weishaupt's affectionate titles was Patriarch of the Jacobins. After the storm of the Revolution Society, the power to govern France was vested in the Comité de Salut Public, that is composed of 300 men, all leaders in the Illuminati Masonic order. Lady Queensborough remarks the particular brand of communism favored by the conspirators was based on the theory that the poor could not help themselves or improve their position, that the rich must be suppressed, and that the ideal state could be reached by class war and a dictatorship of the proletariat. Even a casual examination of the forces at work in the French Revolution compared with these which swept Russia 18 years ago will show, and this is 18 years ago after he wrote this book. So this book is 1917, so this is 1935 this book was written, will show a remarkable similarity. It had been ably remarked that the Russian Revolution began where the French Revolution ended. Paraphrastically, it is interesting to notice that in Germany, all secret orders had been disbanded under Hitler's regime. Everything must be done in the order and in plain sight. The fraternity secrets are permitted. Masonic order, the Illuminati, and all other such societies have been destroyed. Mussolini inaugurated the same policy when he first ascended to power in Italy. His autobiography, published in 1928, contains many interesting statements regarding Italian Masonry, which may be appropriately repeated here by virtue of the present discussion. The fascists, a intelligent people worth of the epoch in which they were living, follow me into the new conception of religious policy. To it was attached our war against Masonry as we knew it, Masonry in Italy. It was at war of fundamental importance, and fascism was almost unanimously in a determination to fight it to the end. Let us not forget that the Masons of Italy had always represented a distortion, not only in political life, but in spiritual concepts. All the strength of Masonry was directed against the papal policies, but this struggle represented no real and profound idea. The secret society, from a practical point of view, rested on an association of mutual adulteration, of reciprocated aid, of pernicious nepotism and favoritism to become powerful and to consummate its underhanded dealings. Masonry made use of the weaknesses of the liberal government that succeeded each other in Italy after 1870 to extend its machinations in the bureaucracy, in the magistrate, in the field of education, and also in the army, so that it could dominate the vital ganglions of the whole nation. A secret character throughout the 20th century, its mysterious meetings abhorrent to our beautiful communities, with their sunlight and their love of truth, gave to the sect the character of corruption, a crooked concept of life without program, without soul, without moral value. My antipathy for that disgusting form of secret association goes back to my youth, long before as a Socialist Congress of Ancona, A-N-C-O-N-A, in 1914, I had presented to my comrades the dilemma: socialism or Masonry? That point of view has won a complete triumph in spite of the strong opposition of the Masonic socialists. Later in fascism, I made the same gesture of strength. I took courage. I obeyed the positive commands of my conscious and not any opportunist. My attitude had nothing to common with the anti-Masonic spirit of the Jesuits. They acted for reasons of defense. After all, their inner organization as a religious society is almost completely unknown. For my direct, methodical, and consistent course of policy, the hate of the Masonic sect persecutes me even now. Masonry of that type has been beaten in Italy, but it operates and conspires behind the mask of the international anti-fascism. It utterly fails to defeat me. It tries to throw mud at me, but the insult does not reach its marks. Its machinations, plots, and crimes, but the hired assassins do not control my destiny. It goes gossiping about my weaknesses and the supposed organic afflictions of my body, but I am more alive and stronger than ever. This is a war without quarter, a war of which I am a veteran. Every time that I have wanted to cauterize difficult situation in Italian political life, every time that I have wanted to give a sincere, frank, and loyal moral rectitude to the persona and politics, I have always had against me our masonry. But that organization, which is at other times was very powerful, has been beaten by me, against me. It did not and cannot win. Italians won this battle for me. They found the cure for this leprosy. But the sequel to this above story is that since Mussolini wrote these words, he had been prevailed upon to restore to Masonry their previous liberties. In August of 1930, the Rosicrucian Digest, published in California, printed the following significant announcement. The recent decisions on the part of the Mussolini's permitting Freemasonry and Rosicrucians of Italy to hold lodge sessions and to conduct their work again under a national council composed of their own members and officers result in a rapid revival of work in Italy. Reports from England declared that powerful Jewish influences close to Mussolini were responsible for his reversal of policy. Before drawing this part of this discussion to a close, perhaps a final word from Baruch would be proper, in which he lamented over the fact that the French people were so stupefied, just like the Americans, so stupefied that they could not see the impending revolution directly in front of them. He said to give the fatal impulse to the world. It now only remains for the sect to carry its mysteries into a nation powerful and actively indeed, but unfortunately more susceptible of that effeminaticism, which bereaves man of the power of thinking, than of that judgment which foresees disasters, to a nation which in its ardent and enthusiasm to easily forget that true greatness is not that courage which bids defiance to danger. The Vandals and the barbarians can boast of such heroes, to a nation, in short, that has ever been a prey to illusions, and which before it would hearken to the counsels of wisdom, might in its fury overturn the altar and shiver the sepulchre, returning to reason, only to time to weep over the ruins and lament the devastation of which it had been the cause. Next section. This is called Jewish Control. When good, law-abiding Masons in Europe realized what had happened to their order after the French Revolution, they became sick at heart and discouraged. Not until it was too late to correct the situation did they come to understand what had happened. This was particularly noticeable, that is, in Germany, where the Grand Master, the Duke of Brunswick, issued a manifesto to all German lodges in 1794, declaring that European Masonry had been completely perverted by the new sect called the Illuminati. In his utterly despondence, he advocated disbanding the order entirely. I shall quote his famous manifesto in part. Quote, a great sect arose which, in taking for its motto the good and the happiness of man, worked in the darkness of the conspiracy to make the happiness of humanity a prey for itself. This sect is known to everyone. Its brothers are known no less than its name. It is they who have undermined the foundations of the order of the point of complete overthrow. It is by them that all humanity has been poisoned and led astray for several generations. The ferment that reigns among the peoples is their work. They founded the plans of their insatiable ambition on the political pride of nations. Their founders arranged to introduce this pride into the heads of the people. They began by casting odium on religion. They invented the rights of man, which is impossible to discover even in the book of nature, and they urged the people to wrest from their princes the recognition of these supposed rights. The plan they had formed for breaking all social ties and of destroying all other order was revealed in all their speeches and acts. They deluged the world with a multitude of publications. They recruited apprentices of every rank and in every position. They deluded the most perspicuous men by falsely alleging different intentions. They sown in the hearts of youth the seeds of covetousness, and they decided it with the bait of the most insatiable passions. Indomitable pride, thirst of power, such were the only motives of the sect. Their masters had nothing less in view than the thrones of the earth, and the government of the nations was to be directed by their notarial clubs. This is what has been done and is still being done. But we notice that princes and people are unaware how and by what means this is being accomplished. That is why we say to them in all frankness, the misuse of our order, this misunderstanding of our secret has produced all the political and moral troubles with which the world is filled today. You who have been initiated, you must join yourselves with us in raising your voices so as to teach people and princes that the sectarians, the apostles of our order, have alone been and will be the authors of present and future revolutions. We must assure princes and people of our honor and our duty, that our association is in no way guilty of these evils, but in order that our attestation should have force and merit belief, we must make for princes and people a complete sacrifice, so as to cut out to the roots that the abuse and error. We must from this moment dissolve the whole order. This is why we destroy and annihilate it completely from the time. We will preserve the foundation for posterity, which will clear them when humanity in better times can derive some benefit from our holy alliance. Adam Weishaupt lived to the age of 82. He continued his criminal activities against civilization for many years after the French Revolution. For the sake of emphasis, let it be remarked once more that masonry in both England and the United States had always been unlike the masonry of continental Europe, which can best be designated by the use of the term Grand Orient. The real conspirators behind the Illuminati were the Jews. The whole scheme was a Jewish plot to the core. Bernard Lazare, Lazare, a well-known Jewish writer, says, there were Jews, Kabbalist Jews, around Weishaupt. One must also bear in mind the influence of Comer, the mystical Jew from the East, upon the mind of Weishaupt even prior to the birth of the Illuminati. Confiscated documents of the organization disclosed that of the 39 chief sub-leaders of Weishaupt, 17 were Jews. Illuminated Hall of Ingolstadt, where Weishaupt lived, was later transformed into a synagogue. The Jewish method of exhausting their Gentile environment has always been to stir up strife from secret sources and engender class hatreds. That's what they do right now, folks, here in the United States. They create all kinds of hatred towards one another, either by skin, by class, by how much money someone makes, what there are all kinds of what religion you are, everything is all to do that. And so you fight one another. When you do that, it's to their advantage. They never have to stop from doing this, folks. They take advantage of people being so gullible. This was a plan used in bringing about the death of Christ. As a mob spirit was created, the same policy is described in Acts 14:2. But the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles, made their minds evil, affected against their brethren. In indicating his own race, Lazare says the complaint of the anti-Semites seems to be founded. The Jews had the revolutionary spirit, consciously or not. He is an agent of revolution. Returning to Mrs. Webster, we are told that the Jew who turns himself over to the subversive activities becomes a formidable hidden power. Nevertheless, in modern revolutions, the part played by the Jews cannot be ignored, and the influence they have exercised will be seen on the examinations that have been twofold: financial and occult. Throughout the Middle Ages, it is as sorcery and usury that they incur the reproaches of the Christian world, and it is still the same role, under the more modern terms of magicians and loan mongers, that we detect their presence behind the scenes of revolution from the 17th century onward. The plan used by the Jewish leaders of the Illuminati to keep informed concerning all Gentile activities and to know what wires to pull so as to produce confusion was to require every member to spy constantly on his fellow members. They did that in the Soviet Union, folks. This is what that's what their plans are here in this country too. People spy. What is he doing over there? What's she doing over there? You see, on their neighbors. So once a month, each luminous was compelled to hand to his superior officer a sealed envelope containing information about his friends. It bore the title Publius Licet and was to be conveyed to the unknown ruler at the top of the order's pyramid. The individual member down the line was kept in the dark, knowing only one leader above him, to whom he had taken the oath of blind obedience. The Gentile dupes were taught to think that they were parts of a greater plan, and not concerning themselves to learn that they had allowed themselves to become helpless cogs in a merciless wheel, which was created for the purpose of grinding the Gentile nations to powder. This is not, I'm not making this up, folks. This is very clearly what's going on. It's worked really well for them. It's the same old game. They divide you. This system has been expanded in our day to cover the entire Russian Empire, concerning which it had truthfully been said, everybody is a spy spying on a spy. Every fundamental principle of the Illuminati may be traced through the French Revolution down to the present hour through the avenues of international communism. One of the closest men to WEISHAUPT was a Jew by the name of Caglio Cagliostro. His real name was Joseph Balsamo, but he took the lodge name Comte de Cagliostro. He traveled through Greece and Egypt and knew the occult secrets of the Jewish Kabbalah. He was on the inner circle of the Illuminati and had much to do with reckoning European masonry and changing it into an instrument for producing carnage. A close association of Cagliostro was the Swabian Dr. Mesmer, whose evil hypnotic science still bears his name of mesmerism. Learn something new. Since the Jews have always controlled the main arteries of finance and thoroughly schooled in the arts of keeping out of sight while Gentiles' dupes remain under the spotlight of the public eye. It is not known in what quantities they pour sums of money into the Illuminati channels, but it is evident that from some secret society, the movement has inexhaustibly quantities to draw upon with which to carry out its brutal plot against the Gentile civilizations. All great civilizations have been destroyed by these people from within. Karl Marx, the recognized father of modern communism, cites his teachings out of the writings of Adam Weishaupt. The views expressed by both men are identical at many points. The first Communist Manifesto, published by Marx in 1848, embodies both the principles and the spirit of the Illuminati. Therefore, what we know as communists today is the linear descendants of the same Antichrist conspiracy that brought about the French Revolution. It is in his remarkable book, Are These Things So? Colonel E.N. Sanctuary discusses the three ringleaders who were largely responsible for revamping the Illuminati and preserving its root ideas. We read, Marx, Lassalle, and Engels comprised a trio of Jews who, taking an altruistic theory, managed in a short time to turn it into a pronounced revolutionary doctrine, a doctrine that has left its scar on practically every civilized nation, and which has so wounded some that they cannot recover. Every cult and movement to a certain degree reflects the outstanding characteristics of the founders. Revolutionary socialism, now more commonly called communism, is no exception. The outstanding traits of these three men, which can be said to be outstanding traits of a large Jewish element, are found to predominate in the various groups that go to make up the present-day revolutionary movements. They are arrogant, intolerant, inflamed, emotions, lack of ethical standards, and a desire for revenge, pronounced in Marx, immoral and unscrupulous acts, a demonic will, a disregard for the truth, the belief that to attain an end means is justifiable, and a desire for revenge, pronounced Lassalle's, love of philosophy, desire to be thoroughly or thought to be progressive. That's the key word, folks, right there, progressive. And a disposition to employ wealth attained through whatever means to the advancement of subversive movements pronounced in Engels. Another noticeable parallel between these three men and the vast majority of these now credited with being leaders in the world revolutionary movement, call it socialism or call it communism, is that none of them were wage earners. They wasn't, folks. They never worked in their life. They never. These are what I would call well-to-do Jews, folks. I'm not talking about the average Jew. They were spoiled at an early age, you see. Or, let's see, or of the groups of citizens for which welfare and uplift they insist they are working. That's part of Fabianism. They claim they're going to be helping you out when reality they're not. It's just, they lie. Again, everything benefits for them to take over. Marx, to use good American slang, was a plain moocher. Lassalle inherited a fortune and earned no money himself. Engels, who was engaged with his father in the operation of cotton mills in which children were employed at Scandinavia's low wages and for weekly long hours, was a wealthy man. This is how they do it, folks. They're not good people. They just aren't. They never have. They don't worship God. They're not from God. That's a lie. That's my point. Never are. Never have been. They're always conniving. Karl Marx made popular, apparently, folks, when this whole thing came down, something that took place with communism and all that, they just morphed. They just moved something else. They moved the furniture. Everybody says, oh, Soviet Union fell, such and such, da-da-da-da. No more enemy, da-da-da. But what they've been doing, if you follow, with the neocons and everybody else in this country, is that we've been waging war against other countries that they have never done anything to us. In fact, we've been waging war for over 20 years in certain countries, ever since the Twin Towers took place, when there is no reality of any of these countries, any of these people even attacked us. It's an inside job. Karl Marx made popular, apparently, the well-known Jewish system of adopting a name other than one's own. His name was not Marx, but Mordecai. He came from a long line of rabbis, although his father abandoned that profession and took up law. When Karl was about 6 years old, the older Mordecai renounced the Jewish faith and embraced Christianity. Yeah, they're what we call, what do they call themselves? They morphed into something else. They claim they're Christians or Catholics or whatever else it is, but they're not what they say they are, folks, in order to basically fool people. So what he did, he renounced his Jewish faith and became Christian. Some of Marx admires attribution to his action on the part of the elder Mordecai, not to willingness, but to pressure brought by government agencies. This is cited as one reason for Marx's persistent effort to destroy everything related to or erected upon the Christian faith. Regardless of the reason, in later years, as Marx associated more and more with the subversive elements, he took the position that the whole world was injured because of Christianity and belief. At least he urged that the revolutionary weapon as the one and only means to correct the wrong. Of him, Professor F.J.C. Herschel, spelled H-E-A-R-N-S-H-A-W, writes, he was intolerant, bitter, violent, venomous, nor was he a ferocious, intolerant, a mere superficial defect of manner. It penetrated to the depths of his being and debilitated all his thoughts. He was entirely lacking in the scientific spirit, totally incapable of dispassionate argument. His inflamed emotions determined his conclusion, and his perverted intelligence put forth all its power with a complete disregard of all moral scruples to provide an apparent rational foundation for them. Marx's eminence is that of the agitator, not that of the thinker. He did not make socialism scientific, he made it predatory. Good quote. The parallelism between Weishaupt's teaching, the French Revolution, and the Russian Revolution is unmistakable. It has been explained that the Illuminati was Jewish. In like manner, the Moscow dictatorship is Jewish. When the bureaucracy was set up in Russia 18 years ago, it was headed by 545 men, and of this number, 447 were Jews, many of them having come from the east side of New York. It has been established on the floor of the United States Congress that a Jewish banking firm in Wall Street actually supplied Lenin and Trotsky with the money to finance the Russian outbreak. Mrs. L. Fry, FRY, points out in her book, Waters Flowing Eastward, that as far back as 1893-94, the Tsar government knew that Jacob Schiff, president of Kuhn Lowe and Company Bank in New York, had been named chairman of the Committee on the Revolutionary Movement in Russia by Bernard Barré of the United States. Another parallelism is the fact that Weishaupt required the leaders of his order to change their names. In lodge parlance, they also changed the names of cities. Weishaupt took the title of Spartacus. It was interesting to me to learn while in Germany that when the Reds first became active in the country a few years ago, they did not call themselves communists. They were known as Spartacus in memory of Weishaupt. Do you remember that after the World War I? Yeah, they nearly overthrew Germany. They came close. The Jewish leaders in Moscow likewise changed their names. Here are a few examples. Zetterbaum became Lenin. Bronstein became Trotsky. Finkelstein became Litvinov. And Soberson became Rodek. During the French Revolution, the Sabbath was destroyed. The same has been done in Russia. Atheism was the national religion of the French Revolution. The same is true in Russia. The Illuminati was correctly called a subterranean fire in view of the foregoing disclosures. We will say that the same flame is not burning today. Next section, Russia today. We have now learned that what history records as the French Revolution was in reality the ripening fruit of Illuminized and perverted Jewish masonry. After years of preparation, there was suddenly released upon a dumbfounded humanity a torrent of misdirected energy which changed the face of all Europe. Sparks from the conflagration blew in every direction and produced new flames in many parts of the world. Although 150 years have elapsed since this Holocaust took place, the forces thus set in motion have by no means spent themselves. If one thing to fight for idea is another thing to just fight for the sake of fighting. The Illuminati of the 18th century, like the communists of today, developed a professional fierceness which feeds upon violence and human suffering. Tell me, folks, this is the key. Anybody that's involved in this has got to be either psychologically messed up or anti-human to cause suffering to others. And most of these people did not come from what we call the bottom of Jewish people. It came from the top, who were very well lived. One overturn followed another after the appetites of the revolutionists became welted for French blood. Same thing in the Soviet Union. The Moscow leaders have likewise continued their bestialities, crimes against the poor, helpless, and exhausted Russian masses for 18 years in the name of perpetual revolution. They have reduced to a science the idea that there should be no rest and peace for those who are governed. To them, a revolution should be continuous, never allowed to come to an end. So their formula is simple. If prosperity and contentment were to settle down upon the people, the revolutions would be no longer needed. Of course not. They wouldn't be needed. They got to continue to beat these people to death. They would probably lose both their jobs and their heads. Equally asinine are the fronting of street corner Reds in the United States who demand the overthrow of the government under the disguise of seeking to protect the liberties of the tollers. Again, the same old play. Any human being with an atom of common sense can see that the true purpose of communism organizers is simply to stir up strife and produce violence, because this is the way they make their living. They are paid by the ring of international despots to inflame the passions of those who listen to them. If it was a matter of personal conviction with them, they would not be trying to tear down a system of democratic government under which the citizens had enjoyed more liberty, fraternity, and equality than any other country in the history of the world. Every American citizen can vote, exercise free speech, free press, accumulate property, expand his mind and heart without interference, and worship God according to the dictates of his own consciences. He has never had a king, tyrant, or dictator to rule over him. He enjoys more personal liberty than any other type of citizen has ever enjoyed since government began to exist on this earth. Yet the country is full of base voice, leather lunch soapbox orators who are deliberately trying to create class hatred in the name of personal liberty and the mythological forgotten man. As in the day of the Illuminati, they are being directed from a occult Jewish source far above them. Any man who will live a good life, work hard, develop his mental faculties, and take advantage of his opportunities for self-advancement can climb without restraint to the topmost rung of human achievement under the American system of government. Note, for instance, that thousands of men coming from the humblest and poorest walks of life who have fitted themselves for positions of responsibility, that is, in the United States Senate, Congress, and other positions of local and national government. Instead of demanding the destruction of the American social order as it now exists, it would be more intelligent if agitators were to agitate for the purification of what we already have. Their inconsistencies is at once evident. They are inconsistent because they are insincere, because they're liars. Yet this is the principle behind Illuminatiism, past and present. Illuminism has for its main purpose of intensifying of human restlessness as a means of tearing down everything that exists. So by long-range advanced preparation, the way may be paid for the powers behind the scenes to set up their final system of international government, which proposes to reduce all Gentiles to the same state of slavery that exists in the Soviet Russia at the present time. Therefore, we discovered that communism is not a new thing. We have followed it back in a straight line to the year 1776. But even now, we have not traced it to its historical source as an antichrist conspiracy existing for the purpose of blotting out everything that bears the name of Christianity. Its roots reach much deeper into the past than space has permitted us to show in this treatise. No communism is not something that is designed to bless and enrich the poor and middle classes. Never has, folks. Never has. It's about overthrowing a system of government that's actually somewhat freedom-loving, and to destroy that and make it thousands of times worse, and to kill people, that is, to kill masses. It did not originate with the downtrodden Russian masses. It did not break forth spontaneous 18 years ago. It resulted from centuries of undercover Jewish planning. Its final objective is to exhaust the human family in suffering and misery until the whole world can be brought under the heels of a merciless bureaucracy of Moscow, which has been aptly called the Red Beast. So that is the whole book. Adam Weishaupt, that is a human devil. It's a short read, about 50 pages. And now you know this is older, but to the point. And the funny thing is, what took place in 1989 and early 1990s is that basically we thought that communism fell. Folks, that's just a classic psyop. It never failed. It just morphed in something else. And what it's morphed into, a lot of ways, folks, is part of the United Nations, you see. Because it was set up by a communist, Alger Hiss, you see. And people don't realize that. And you got people today, I'm just going to say it right there. People are living in a fairy tale, folks. You're living in a fairy tale. You think everything's fine. And yet you believe all the garbage these people tell you, and they lie to you over and over. It's based upon a lot of times the religion stuff, whatever you want to call it today. Anything, New Ageism, whatever. But it's just, the whole idea is to get you off what really is going on around you and thinking everything is fine and fruity and everything's beautiful. But in reality, and you're seeing it, you've seen it for the last 3 years, folks. It's in your face. It's in your face. And very few of you are, as far as I have met, do not yet see the real threat. They want to kill you. That's what they're going to do, folks. And they're doing it right out in the open. They're not even pretending, you see. They're stating it clearly if you want to know the truth. So, but anyway, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening. I wish you a good day and a good night, wherever you may be. You have a good day or night, as I say. You take care. I see someone said something here. Hold on. Your angel flex or soft plot seek you, then to resist, because we don't know him. Do not hate evil, separate yourself from it. Bible Codex is this little script. Reading wannabes, he is desisted. Your angel in flesh or sackcloth prophet. Okay, somebody said unsubscribe, unsub, whatever it says. Anyway, hope everyone's doing well like I am. Wish you a good night, and you take care. Good night.